welcome to Crime and Court. This is an episode of my Wrongful Conviction Series, Innocence Lost, and this is going to be about the exoneree after 21 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit, Alan Newton. So, we're going to first start off with a little video clip where he's speaking and talking about his time in prison and, how he was exonerated and, working with the Innocence Project, who worked to get him exonerated from his charges that, he never committed in the first place. So if you are interested in wrongful convictions, in corruption, crimes, where, the wrong person goes to prison or people are framed, that's kind of what this channel is about. So don't forget to subscribe before the end of this video. Also hit that like button. And let's dive into Alan Newton, who is an exoneree after 21 years in prison. I can't even imagine.
My name is Alan Newton. I was arrested on basically June of 1984, rape, robbery, assault, a bunch of other charges. I was convicted the following year and sentenced to 40 years in prison. This last year, July 6, I was exonerated after serving 22 years by DNA evidence with the help of the Innocence Project, who was able to locate the evidence in my case, have it tested, and the test proved that I hadn't committed the crime that I was sentenced for. Well, they testified later on, the police officers, that they were zeroing in on me, which made me a suspect. And, even though I don't know for sure at this time, but the procedures that was going on in the lineup, it definitely looked like they zeroed in on me. And they may have even passed information to the victim, to indicate to her that I was the person that was arrested, for this crime.
If you're surprised by any of this stuff happens all the time. And it's confirmation bias. It's the things you're looking for, like, oh, well, if this person that I'm talking to is a suspect, then whatever they tell me, I'm going to look at it with the lens that they're guilty. And everything that they say proves to me that he is. So that's how cops think. I mean, nothing against cops. Cops are great. We need cops in this world, but it's unfortunate that some of them become very narrowly blinded by the job. I don't know what it is, but sometimes they might truly believe that they're getting their bad guy, but they might fudge a little evidence to make sure that the conviction sticks or something along those lines. Things happen because we're all human and we all make mistakes, and some of us might, make some errors that could actually put someone in prison. If you're working in, the jail systems or the court systems or whatever, you could put someone away who is innocent, and that's not okay. There needs to be a better way. And I talked about in one of my last videos, I'm going to put it in the descriptions, link it to this video as well, about the John Reed technique of interrogation and what officers are allowed to do on the job when they're interrogating someone. And it can blow your mind that the whole entire purpose of their training to interrogate someone is to break down their confidence and to never let them say the words that I didn't do it or I'm innocent or anything like that, to get them away from that narrative immediately as fast as possible and start telling them, we know you did it. Give them lies. Tell them, well, we have video of you doing it. This is the John Reed technique. And then that is, or your best friend over there. We're questioning your best friend in the other room, and they said you did it. So what do you have to say? And you're sitting in a room being interrogated by police, and you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Once you've been sitting in that room for 8 hours without, food and whatever, and yeah, it can happen. It happens very, very easily where people give false confessions, and it's mind-boggling that people haven't woken up to this as much as we have yet. I mean, most of society, a lot of your common jurors are going to not think that someone's going to confess to something that they didn't do. They don't understand the complexities of how easy it is for a confession to be coerced by someone in a very strong and powerful position, and you're in a very weak and vulnerable position when you're being interrogated. So anyways, that's my little ad about that, but it happens. I mean, people going to prison for Stephen Avery, who I'm talking about on my channel, I'm doing a deep dive of. He had a misidentification in his very first wrongful conviction, which was 1985, and he went to prison for 18 years for a crime that he didn't do. And he was exonerated by DNA. But they kind of hid that information that they knew somebody else confessed to the crime, maybe about 6 years before they released him. So yeah, that was some issues there. But anyways, it happens all the time. Misidentification. The cops I believe it happened in this case too, where they'll use the same person in photo lineups and in-person lineups, and it's just that one person that they've focused on, the cops. Like, they think it's Alan Newton, so they put Alan Newton in all of the photo lineups that this victim sees, and that face is going to be familiar. You're going to start to recognize that face. Eventually, you're going to pick his face because you've seen it already in the previous photo lineup that you just looked at. Not necessarily in the crime, but that's the police putting false memories in your brain. And it happened in the Stephen Avery case, and it happened, I believe, in this case too. I mean, not so much, I don't know. Well, sorry, I'm being very talkative.
And could she
I'll
take
shut
an
up.
additional look at me? The lineup was definitely improper because they used not only a visual lineup.
I apologize about the volume. I can't do anything to increase it at this point. It's as boosted as it's gonna be.
They used a voice lineup, and they had me doing some things in the lineup. For instance, going up to the door, exhibiting my mouth. That was plainly improper. Well, I didn't become a client at Innocence Project until 2004 because 10 years earlier, 94, I got denied, and then 4 years later, 98, my family hired an attorney to try to find the DNA evidence again. And now this is what I believe about the criminal justice system. In 94, when I was doing this stuff pro se on my own, nothing was made available for me. They couldn't find anything. 4 years later, I hire an attorney. They don't find a rape kit, but they find the victim's clothing. And now, now I look back on it, I only believe they found the clothing as, like, okay, we throwing you a bone. We're not going to give you the rape kit. We're going to give you the clothing. The clothing was tested. There was no evidence on the clothing. But, they kept my hopes not too high and not too low because one of the things they explained to me was your evidence couldn't be found 2-3 times. So it may not be found again. So, don't get too optimistic because if it's not found again, we have to shut the case. We have to close your file. But fortunately, it was found. The evidence was tested. 6 to 8 months later, I was exonerated, and I'm home now free after 22 years. It was emotional. I mean, it was an emotional moment because you know, like I said, the testing procedure was going on, and I was calling, trying to, has there been any information? I'm getting more uptight. I try to keep a regular routine going while I was inside, going to school, because I was still in college at the time, going to school, working, and just, but after a while, I couldn't keep a routine because, you know, I had a lot of things on my mind, and just knowing that my exoneration was right around the corner, it kind of, threw me for a loop because, like I said, it was so emotional. My family's calling back and forth. We stay in contact. Has there been any news yet? And when I finally got the news I was expecting, I broke down. I mean, I couldn't hold it no more because I was holding it for years now. So it was like, okay, I got no more reason to hold it. I just let the emotion, overwhelm me because it's like, I'm coming home.
Wow. So it says learn more at innocentproject.org. We're going to go do that. So let's learn more about, oops, not on that page. Let me switch screens here. Okay, perfect. Let me actually zoom in a little bit. Sorry, I'm usually prepped a little more here. Okay. I needed that last page. Okay. I really did need that last tab. Sorry, guys. I thought I clicked on his page. Here we go. All right. Now I'm ready. All right, so cases. Wait. Didn't go to his page. Here he is. It says 21 years. He said 22 in the video. I think it was, somewhere between. All right, so on July, his face, nice picture of him. He's kind of a big deal now, and let's get into it. So on July 6th, 2006, Alan Newton was exonerated of R, robbery, and A charges. He had asked for DNA testing in 1994, and his request was denied because evidence had been presumed to be lost. In 2005, at the Innocence Project's request, so after Innocence Project had been hired on, the district attorney's office found the R kit after an exhaustive search. Post-conviction DNA testing then proved that Newton was not the perpetrator of this crime. So what was the crime? At about 4 a.m. on June 23rd, 1984, the 25-year-old victim stopped at a convenience store in the Bronx in New York. As the victim was leaving the store, she was grabbed from behind by another customer who put a box cutter to her throat and pushed her from behind into a blue and white Grand Prix and drove away. After a few minutes, the car stalled, as they were going up a hill. What? Okay, so, and the assailant got out and lifted the hood. The victim could not get out of the car because the passenger side door handle was broken off. The assailant dragged her into a nearby park, did some things to her, and also attempted to take her money and cigarettes. I'll just leave it at that. You guys can read for yourself. They arred her. They did things. Okay. She then went to find a cab, and the assailant returned, grabbed her again, and took her to a nearby abandoned building. There they struggled, and he arred her again. In order to prevent her from identifying him, the perpetrator then cut the victim's face with the razor, blinding her in the left eye. Oh my God. He took her money and cigarettes, telling her that if she called the police, he would come back and end her life. She saw the back of the assailant as he ran away and then passed out. When the victim regained consciousness, she went to a call box and summoned the police. Thank God that call box was around. All right, so the identification. The victim described the assailant as a black male, approximately 27 years, wearing a beige shirt, pants. Just pants. No description about pants, just he was wearing pants. I'm glad he was wearing pants. All right, so she later described the assailant as 5'7" or 5'8", 160 pounds, short afro, mustache. She could not tell if the person was dark or light-skinned because it was so dark out. She told a detective at the hospital that he was physically large and that his name was Willie. Okay. So, while still in the hospital recovering from surgery, the victim viewed nearly 200 photographs on June 24th and 25th, 1985, and selected Alan Newton's photo. On June 28, 1984, police picked up the victim from the hospital and brought her in to view a lineup. She identified Newton in the lineup and again at trial. On June 27th, 1984, the convenience store clerk from which the victim was abducted identified Newton in a photo lineup and in a live lineup the next day. So an additional person identified Newton, the convenience store clerk from which the victim was abducted. Okay. That's just mind-boggling that they both, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he really did look like the guy. In the case of Stephen Avery really did look like the guy. So this sounds very similar. All right, so on June 27th, 1984, the convenience store clerk from which the victim was abducted identified Newton in a photo lineup. Sorry. Okay. So the biological evidence, the victim testified at trial that the assailant ejaculated and that she felt it running down her leg. The doctor who collected the R kit from the victim at the hospital and the serologist testifying for the state both testified they observed spermatozoa on the victim's specimens. Okay. So the defense at trial, Newton maintained. So now remember, this is 84. So I mean, DNA is not at all what we know it to be today. So they can basically say, yeah, we found this, but it doesn't they can't necessarily tell you who it belongs to. All right, so post-conviction, at that time, they could not tell you. All right, post-conviction. Newton first requested post-conviction DNA testing on August 16th, 1994. So that's still like 10 years in. But now we have DNA testing where we can do that and find out if he we can exonerate him or not, include him or exclude him, basically. So the court denied his request on November 3rd, 1994. I don't understand that because the kit could not be located, which you should really look a little harder. This is someone's life in prison. In 2005, at the request of the Innocence Project, the Bronx County District Attorney's Office asked the Property Clerk Division to conduct a search for the victim's kit, despite claims made by officials at the property clerk's office over the course of 11 years that the kit could not be located and was presumed destroyed. In November 2005, the kit was found after a physical search of the evidence barrels at the Pearson Place Queens warehouse. The R kit was found in the same barrel that was indicated on the evidence voucher. The victim's R kit was submitted to the New York City office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Department of Forensic Biology, and the evidence was split to enable replicate testing by an independent laboratory. In April 2006, Forensic Science Associates obtained the full male STR DNA profile from testing from their the swabs that they had, the samples. The OCME testing of the swab completed in March 2006 yielded a partial profile consistent with FSA's result. New reference samples were collected from Newton and both FSA and the OCME generated Newton's DNA profile from them to compare to the crime scene evidence. The Bronx County District Attorney's Office confirmed the profile that the OCME and the FSA obtained for Newton by comparing it against his profile on record in the state DNA databank. The DNA testing conclusively excluded Newton as the source of the spermatozoa recovered from the victim immediately after the incident. On July 6th, 2006, Alan Newton was freed and walked out of Bronx Courthouse after the Innocence Project and the Bronx County District Attorney's Office filed a joint motion to vacate Newton's conviction. That's amazing that the District Attorney's Office actually was like, yeah, we gotta vacate this conviction. All right, so he served 21 years, might be closer to 22. This was in the state of New York. The charge was for R and A. You can't say these words on YouTube, so hopefully you guys are looking along. Okay, so his sentence was 13 and a half to 40 years. I mean, that's a huge differential. 13 and a half to 40 years. All right, so incident date was June 23rd, 1984. He was convicted on May 21st, 1985, and he was exonerated July 6, 2006. He pled not guilty. Contributing causes of his conviction was eyewitness misidentification, and we know that he was in all of the lineups because if she found him in the, well, but we do know too that, I mean, we don't know what the law enforcement was saying. We don't know how she came upon identifying him in the first place to go about determining what happened, because obviously he was not the guy, and she either misremembered, which is, human, or she might have had somebody like in her ear whispering or something. I'm just saying, because it happens. And it happened in the Stephen Avery case as well. So it's not unheard of. All right, so this is an article from the Innocence Project. Is this the one I was going to read? I don't think it has a whole lot more than, wait. Oh, here. Okay. Yeah, so basically the first part tells you what we already just went over. He went through 12 years after his first motion for DNA testing. That is wild. 12 years after he first wanted DNA testing is when he finally got it with the Innocence Project. So that's 12 additional years sitting in prison. Yeah, so that's 22. All right, so Al Newton has always maintained his innocence, and he lost any chance of parole 3 separate times because he wouldn't admit to a crime he didn't commit. This is the most effed up part of, well, there's many effed up parts about our criminal justice system. This is one of them. You can't get paroled unless you admit that you're guilty. But if you didn't do it, you have to sit and rot in prison. Because you stick to your guns and say, I didn't do it, you sit and rot in prison. Does that make any sense to anybody? No. Okay, so we could have proven Al's innocence nearly 12 years ago in the NYPD, if the NYPD had adequate evidence preservation, storage, and retrieval systems, said Potkin, who is, I don't know, the district attorney maybe. Anyways, continuing on. The only logical conclusion for why this evidence wasn't located sooner is that Pearson Place officials didn't get up and look for it. They simply claimed they couldn't find it. An Innocence Project review of cases it has closed, meaning cases that do not result in exonerations or continue in litigation, in the last 10 years shows that fully 50% of closed cases in New York City were closed because the NYPD said evidence was lost or destroyed at Pearson Place warehouse. In the last 10 years, 50% of closed cases in New York were closed because the NYPD said evidence was lost or destroyed in that warehouse. Wow. Wow. Just wow. Okay. This infuriates me. For the same time period nationwide, 32% of closed cases were the result of reportedly lost or destroyed evidence. Poor evidence preservation and storage is a national problem, but it's particularly serious in New York. This case reveals staggering and appalling problems in the New York NYPD's handling of evidence from old cases. Al Newton's exoneration calls into question all of the cases we've closed after being formally notified that evidence no longer exists. Wow. Who is Scheck? Okay, we have to go up and find Scheck. Director Barry Scheck is the Innocence Project director. And who is the other person? Potkin. Newton will appear in court with Vanessa Potkin, his Innocence Project attorney. Okay, so that makes sense. All right, good. Now we know. And the Innocence Project said today that it will formally ask the NYPD to aggressively search for evidence in more than a dozen cases the Innocence Project closed in recent years, as well as 6 open cases where evidence has not yet been located, and to give a specific accounting of what went wrong in locating evidence in Newton's case and what policies and procedures will be implemented to avoid future tragedies like this one. Like those people too lazy to go in the back and look could have gotten this guy out of prison. All right, so continuing on, we recognize that this is not a simple problem, but enough is enough. How many people are sitting in prison for years while evidence in their cases sits in the New York PD warehouse? We will be asking Commissioner Kelly to order a top-level search for evidence in about 20 cases total. I wonder how those turned out. I really would like to know some follow-up on that. As the Bronx District Attorney's Office demonstrated in this case, if there's a serious determination to find old evidence, it can be found, and justice demands it. Newton's evidence would not have been located without Assistant District Attorney and Chief of the an SA Crimes Bureau, Elisa Konderman, I don't know how to say that. Konderman? I don't know. Konderman in Bronx District Attorney Robert T. Johnson's office, personally asking officials at Pearson Place to look for evidence in this case. So yeah, it wouldn't have been found unless Assistant District Attorney went and asked personally asked from the DA's office. All right, so the Bronx District Attorney's Office then consented to DNA testing on the evidence and joined the Innocence Project in the motion to vacate Newton's conviction and release him. ADA Kunderman treated this case as a top priority. If it weren't for her unstinting efforts beyond what one ordinarily expects from a prosecutor in her position, Al Newton would still be in prison. Newton will be joined Thursday by his family, who has fought to prove his innocence for the last 2 decades. Before his wrongful conviction, Newton worked at a bank and a telephone company in the World Trade Center. Oh my gosh. All right. His wrongful conviction stemmed from a June 1984 R when a woman was assaulted outside a convenience store at 3rd Avenue and 180th Street in the Bronx, and she was taken to a nearby park. We know about this, in the abandoned building. She was hard, and the perpetrator beat her, stabbed her in the eye. Yikes. In order to prevent her from identifying him later. The victim identified Newton in photos, a lineup, and in court, though just before his trial, she told prosecutors she wasn't certain he was the perpetrator. Are you kidding me, lady? Are you kidding me? Including Newton, 181 people in 32 states, including 19 in New York, have been exonerated through DNA testing. At the time of this article, there have been more. I think there's over 200 now people that have been exonerated in the U.S. The Innocence Project, affiliated with the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, has provided direct representation or consultation in most of them. And we thank the Innocence Project for all that they do. They're amazing. I was going to go back to something that caught my attention, and I can't remember now. All right, so exonerate Alan Newton earns a college degree tomorrow. So this was written a little bit after he got out of prison, and he did go out and, started making a life for himself. So this is part one of making a new life for himself. So after serving 21 years in prison for an R that he didn't commit, Alan Newton was ready to start his new life on the day that he was released, July 6, 2006, repeatedly requesting DNA testing since he first learned of the technology in 1994. Newton was told over and over that evidence collected at the crime scene had been lost or destroyed by the New York Police Department. In 2005, the Innocence Project asked property clerks at the NYPD storage facility to conduct one final search before Allen's case was closed. They found the evidence in the exact spot marked on the evidence report all along. Lazy ass people. And this person served more time, 12 more years, because somebody wouldn't go check. They found the evidence in the exact same spot. Okay, the rest is history. Evidence was tested and it proved that Newton didn't commit the crime in 1984, and which he was behind bars for. Almost immediately after his release, Newton began taking classes at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn with the help of the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund and supporters at the college at the Moet, Hennessy, USA. I don't know words, guys. Tomorrow, I don't know what that, with the dots over it. Tomorrow he graduates with honors and a bachelor's degree. Bachelor's degree in business. But he's not done. Now he plans to attend law school. The CEO of that Hennessy thing is throwing Newton a party in the company's New York headquarters June 9th. Cornell said he was proud to honor Newton. Al Newton is an inspiration to all America. He has overcome enormous obstacles by focusing on the positives rather than allowing himself to think like a victim. A lesser man might have succumbed to the negative forces of anger and bitterness, but not Alan. We are proud to honor this brave man and celebrate his achievements. And finally, one last update here I have. Since he was exonerated, and see, he looks so nice in a suit. Anyways, all right, so since he was exonerated in 2006, Alan Newton has spoken in favor of several criminal justice reforms in New York State, improving police lineup procedures, recording interrogations, providing compensation for the exonerated. But the issue that feels the most personal to him is evidence preservation. If my evidence had never been located, I would have been just another case. I wouldn't have a voice, he said. For more than a decade, Newton sought the biological evidence that could prove his innocence, only to be told repeatedly that it had been lost. The Innocence Project requested one final search. Okay, we know the story. And they finally got it after it had nearly been lost. Most recently, Newton spoke at 2 public hearings before the New York State Bar Association Task Force on Wrongful Convictions with Innocence Project co-directors Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, and a number of other New York exonerees. The task force's final report issued this year includes a proposal for modernizing the state's evidence preservation system and extending the amount of time that forensics evidence must be retained, among other criminal justice reform recommendations. Since then, New York State's highest court has created a permanent innocence commission to develop reforms to prevent wrongful convictions and monitor how those reforms are working. That's amazing. And more states need to be working on wrongful convictions. I know Illinois, for us, we just got rid of the bail system, and now it's it's a little bit more fair. People can get out. I don't know what is I don't know how the new system works now, but it bail systems usually have in the past and currently keep usually the less fortunate, the lower income section of our populations more oppressed. And by doing away with a cash bail system, Illinois is going to really help reform that side of the injustices that bail, setting high bails for people that can't afford it to get out for, nonviolent crimes. So anyways, it's a good thing. We need more reform in our justice system. It's so slow moving in our justice system that we need to start catching up to technology, to where we are today. All right, so the commission, my dog's all excited because my boyfriend and his daughter's home. They ran to the store. Anyways, all right, so the commission will be a model for other states. Its creation is in no small part due to the efforts of Newton and other New York exonerees. Okay, dog. Oh, they're so loud. I'm sorry. Okay. Like, she's standing at the top. She's not going. All right. Newton says, as exonerees, we already have access to the media and to political figures and to people that could affect policy. Newton has finished a degree in business administration and is applying to law schools. He hopes that with a law degree, he'll have even more leverage to influence public policy. There is no more compelling voice in the call of criminal justice reform than the voice of a person who has been wrongfully convicted and exonerated. All exonerees, simply because of their personal experience, have an important and instructive story to tell, and they are all advocates in their own right. Abso-freaking-lutely. Give them their voice back. Let them speak about the injustices that happen to them. Newton says, I think this is the type of work that exonerees do all their life. whether we're actually physically out there or not, our names speak for us or not. Okay, hold on. Let me reread that. I think I think this is the type of work that exonerees do all their life. Whether we're actually physically out there or not, our names speak for us. Absolutely. So, this appeared in the Innocence Project in print summer 2009, giving them their dues. I want to make sure that, they get the credit. All of this is coming from the Innocence Project. And even the video is an Innocence Project video. They have their own website, and that's from them. So they do some great things. I'm not going to always do Innocence Project cases, but they have a really good website and resources where you can actually go out and find, do some research and find these people and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting. It's awful what he had to go through. And, we're lucky. Society is, we owe it to them. We owe it to them to let them speak. And we owe them our thanks because they lost their freedom. And they served for a crime that they didn't even commit. I just feel like so much gratitude and grace needs to be given to these individuals, and can't even imagine how difficult that struggle would have been. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Innocence Lost. If you or someone you know is wrongfully convicted or has a story to tell, true crime story, feel free to give me or send me an email at crimeandcourtchannel@gmail.com, and I would be happy to feature on this channel. So thank you so much. And again, this is a weekly segment, so I'm going to be, if you are new to my channel, I do a new show about a different person every Sunday. So I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Take care. Bye now. If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeandcourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.